The prairie winds carried whispers of loneliness across the vast plains, a place where silence often screamed louder than words. In that endless stretch of golden grass and rugged earth, people lived hard lives, measured not by luxuries, but by survival, trust, and companionship. Eliza Harper knew this truth better than most. Once married to a stern but hard-working man, she had been branded with a cruel reputation. A barren woman, a wife who could not give her husband the child he longed for. No matter her loyalty, her labor, or her love, that absence became her sentence. When her husband died of fever 2 winters ago, her in-laws wasted no time declaring her useless. She was not family anymore, they said. A widow with no child had no claim to their land. With debts piling and whispers spreading, Eliza had been sold, not as a slave in chains, but as a woman with no choices. A local merchant bartered her off for labor and food. Each day she scrubbed floors, sewed for families, and cooked meals that were not hers to eat. She worked, but the hollow feeling of being unwanted gnawed at her. To most, she was nothing more than a burden, an object shifted from one hand to another. One autumn evening, dusty wagons rolled into town. Among them rode a rancher, broad-shouldered and quiet, with dark hair touched by sun and storm. His name was Thomas Reed, a man known to keep to himself, living miles away on a sprawling ranch with only his cattle and silence for company. But what caught the townsfolk's attention was the little girl perched on his hip, a bright-eyed child with soft curls and a stubborn pout. Rumor had it his wife had died in childbirth, leaving him with their infant daughter. For 3 years, he had raised the girl alone, balancing the harsh duties of a rancher with the tender needs of a child. But he was weary, his calloused hands not enough to soothe the daughter's cries at night, his broad frame too awkward for the delicate tasks of raising a little girl. When Thomas passed through town that day, he sought supplies and perhaps someone willing to help him care for his home. That was when he heard of Eliza, sold, discarded, and working for scraps. Their first meeting was not grand, nor romantic. It was in the dusty yard of the merchant's storehouse, where Eliza bent over a pile of laundry, her sleeves rolled and hands raw from scrubbing. Thomas stood silently, the child in his arms tugging at his shirt. When she caught his shadow falling over her, Eliza looked up, startled. Their eyes met, hers tired, his guarded. "She's the widow who can't bear children," the merchant sneered casually, as though announcing the price of grain. Strong worker, though, not much else to her name. Eliza flushed, shame burning her cheeks. But Thomas didn't flinch at the words. Instead, he studied her for a long moment, then spoke quietly. "I don't need her to bear children. I need her to stay." The merchant blinked. Eliza froze. For the first time in years, someone had spoken of her not as a burden, but as someone needed. That evening, Thomas offered her a choice. Not chains, not barter, but a chance. "I've got a ranch that needs tending," he said, his deep voice steady. "And a little girl who needs more than I can give her. I can offer you food, a roof, and a fair life. Not as a servant, unless that's what you choose. But as family, if you'll have it." Eliza's breath caught. She had been tossed aside so many times, the word family sounded foreign on her ears. She glanced at the little girl hiding shyly in his coat, her wide eyes peeking out with both curiosity and caution. Something inside Eliza softened, and so she went with him. The Reed Ranch sprawled under an endless sky, a place both lonely and alive. The first days were strange. Eliza woke before dawn to help with chores, cooking hearty meals for Thomas and the child, whose name was Clara. She mended torn shirts, swept dust from corners long ignored, and filled the silent house with the simple presence of care. Clara clung to her at first, hesitant but eager for a motherly touch. She would follow Eliza from room to room, tugging at her skirts, offering her a handful of wildflowers or babbling stories only half understood. Eliza's heart, once calloused by rejection, began to stir. She found herself smiling at the girl's stubborn questions, humming lullabies she thought she had forgotten. Thomas, for his part, remained quiet, watching from a distance. He was a man forged by work and loss, unused to expressing his thoughts. Yet he noticed the way his daughter laughed more, the way the house smelled of warm bread, the way his evenings no longer felt so heavy. He saw how Eliza's hands, though weary, touched everything with care, whether it was Clara's hair, his cracked boots, or the land itself. Still, whispers from town traveled fast. "That's the barren widow living with Reed now," people would say. "She couldn't give her own husband a child. What's she doing raising his?" The words reached Eliza's ears, and though she tried to hide it, Thomas noticed the shadow in her eyes. One night, as the fire crackled low, he spoke. "You hear what they say," he muttered, polishing his worn hat. Eliza hesitated, her hands twisting in her lap. "I do. They're not wrong." Thomas looked up, his gaze steady. "They're wrong enough. A woman isn't measured by what she can give a man. Not by children, not by whispers. Clara laughs again because of you. That's worth more than their words." Tears pricked Eliza's eyes. For the first time, someone had spoken against the verdict the world had stamped on her. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Through bitter snows and spring thaws, Eliza wove herself into the fabric of the ranch. She was no longer the widow sold for her barrenness. She was the woman Clara ran to when she scraped her knee, the one Thomas trusted with his home, the heart that gave warmth to their cold, wide land. And somewhere between chores and long evenings, something unspoken blossomed between her and Thomas. Not a fiery passion born of impulse, but a slow, steady flame, like embers that warmed without burning. They found comfort in shared silences, strength in working side by side, and tenderness in the simple acts of trust. One summer night, under the spread of stars, Thomas finally broke the silence. "Eliza," he said, his voice low, "you've given more than I ever expected. More than I deserve. You've given my daughter a mother, and me, a reason to come home at night." He paused, his rough hands trembling slightly. "I don't care what the town says. I don't care about what's been or what can't be. What I know is this: I don't want you to leave." Eliza's breath caught. For so long, she had lived believing she was unwanted, disposable. Now, standing before her was a man offering her not pity, not barter, but belonging. "I don't want to leave," she whispered. And so the widow once sold for her emptiness found a life fuller than she ever imagined. Not with the child she could not bear, but with the child who reached for her hand. Not with the husband who cast her aside, but with the man who saw her worth beyond what the world measured. The prairie winds still howled, carrying with them the voices of gossip and judgment. But inside the Reed Ranch, warmth filled the rooms, laughter echoed in the halls, and love, quiet, steadfast, unyielding, took root in the hearts of a rancher, his daughter, and the widow who stayed.